Welcome to Radio Days with Gary Music Miller. Now here's your co-host, Dave Black.
Hello and welcome everyone once again to Radio Days with Gary Music Miller. I'm Dave Black, your co-host. This is Gary Music Miller, Hall of Famer, longtime voice of WKEE here in Huntington. I'm sure you've heard him from time to time over the past 40, 50, 60, 80 years, whatever it has been. If you've listened to the radio at all in the area. And today is going to be our catch-up day, as we like to call it. It's the last show we're going to do of 2025. If we are so fortunate as to be allowed to live to see next year, we will be beginning what we're going to call season 5 of this program. It is unbelievably hard to believe we've been doing this as long as we have, to be honest. Yeah. So if we're blessed enough to be able to wake up next year, we'll continue to do what we do because, well, we just like to do it. And we hope you like what we do. Today we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be playing catch up. We're going to go over viewer mail and some YouTube comments and catch up on all those. Probably this starts around June and works its way forward, and we'll get it all out of the way and give some answers to maybe some questions and read what you guys have to say and tell you how much we appreciate you. So, exactly. Gary, if you got anything to go over, go ahead and tell us what's happening.
Well, I can start with we both looked at rdwgmm@gmail.com. That's our email address, and we hope you will use it. Let us know that you're out there, where you are, where you're listening to us from, that you are somewhere, that we can mention, not in prison somewhere or something. But we're just going to jump into the question section here. I want to thank our buddy David Mills, who is, well, there are a couple of David Mills out there. I have a friend, David Mills. This is not that David Mills, but this is a friend of David Mills. So Dave Mills wrote us some questions. I'll go over a couple of them, and I have a couple of things from X too, and a couple things to show you. So stay tuned till the end of the show today, if you can. Gary, can I ask a few questions? I've heard that singers and songwriters are paid a certain amount of money for each time their songs are played on the radio. Is that true? How do the record companies know how many times their songs have been played? Did you have to keep a log and mail it to these companies? Who pays these airplay royalties? The station, the record companies. I really don't. That started with a few questions from David Mills. And David, I really don't know the answer to a lot of that. Having been music director, I can tell you that different trade publications, there were at least 3 that Billboard, Cashbox, and Radio and Records. Now, I can tell you that the Radio and Records chart was put together every week. I had to either call or fax a list of the top 40 songs on WKEE, and they would add the airplay from all the radio stations, maybe 1,000 of them reporting, and come up with their positioning on the chart. I had to do a chart every week, and the way I did it, I started with our requests. I numbered our requests. We used to have a top 10 and 10 with Ernie Anderson. And even after that, we kept a log. Every time somebody called for a song, we put a mark down for that song. I took the Tri-State Top 50, which was published by a group of people called Music Man Incorporated. And I kind of flipped those songs upside down. I gave the number 1 song 20 points and the number 20 song 1 point. And I did on a mathematical basis. And I also took Radio and Records information. I would take their top 20 and flip them upside down I added those together, and that's how we came up with our chart. And it's can imagine when we started playing Achy Breaky Heart, everybody knew Billy Ray Cyrus, so we got a zillion calls for that. We didn't have enough paper for it, so we didn't. That song got to number 1 on our station chart for about 2 months, very, very quickly. But I really don't know, David, how singers and songwriters are paid. I know a lot of singers, especially, and I guess songwriters are not happy with record companies per se because of the lack of payment on their own material. And I also heard that Prince once tried to do one of his songs or redo one of his songs. He found out he didn't have the rights to the song. So there are different ways that record companies knew how their songs had been played. Out of the magazines I mentioned, Billboard, Cashbox, several different methodology was used, several different pieces of methodology. Some measured radio airplay, some measured single sales, some measured album sales, and some actually even listed jukebox plays. And I was reading, it's funny because back in 1917, something like that, when Billboard first printed its first chart, it was the top 10 sheet music sellers of the week prior. So, I mean, I really don't know. I don't know how the people get paid. That probably would have to come from a record company. I never got into that. And we did keep logs about 4 times a year, one week at a time, for BMI and ASCAP. BMI, Broadcast Music Incorporated, I think, and ASCAP, American Society of Composers and Performers. And we would have to write down every song that played. So that was kind of a pain, but we did that. And so I'm sorry if I didn't get to some part of your questions. There was a lot of that. I do think somebody in the accounting department or somewhere did pay ASCAP or BMI fees, but I'm not sure how that worked. It really had nothing to do with me as music director. He says, I know there have been many instances where both sides of record A and B made the charts at the same time, but on different places on the chart. How is it possible for fans to purchase one side of a record without purchasing the other side? Well, there's an answer to that, actually. Aren't the chart placements based on record sales? Is there some other factor involved in chart placement? As I said, chart placement we've gone over, anything from actual airplay to singles and album sales and jukebox plays. And there were some charts put together based on club play. But the very first 2-sided song I remember ever hearing where both sides were hits, hearing about, was Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel, were both on the same record.
Who was it that did that?
I don't know who did that. I don't know. It was just
some nobody, some lucky one-shot artist, probably.
Some lucky, yeah. But I'm not exactly sure, except for when we reported our airplay to radio and records, we dealt with them every week. And it made us very important to the record companies because the higher the song got on the chart, the more they sold, and the more other radio stations would follow. I heard from radio stations that followed me, followed Key, and would see what Key added, and they'd go for that too. So I don't know. The charts placements are based on various factors. I think there are more recipes to that than there are Kentucky Fried Chicken. Secrets to that. So, number 3 says, what happens to records and CDs that you play on the radio but are no longer current? Does the station keep them all forever? Are the DJs permitted to keep them personally? Is there ever a yard sale? Most of the records we got, I was going to answer number 2 again. The way some record companies dealt with was not playing the wrong side of a record. But by the early 70s and into the 80s, most of the singles we got were the same song on both sides. One would be listed as mono, one would be listed as stereo. So it would be impossible for us to flip over a song and play it because we would be playing the same song. Now, I think they stopped doing that maybe sometime in the 80s. But anyway, what happens to the records and CDs we play on the radio? If they are no longer played, they go somewhere. I mean, we would have we never had a yard sale. Most of them were marked promotional only, not for sale. So we just lay stacks of records and CDs. I remember doing this at Key. We'd lay CDs out on the kitchen table and say, please steal. You know? So that's what happened. And there were so many of these. I think I heard Joel Jackson, John talking JJ, WCMI, when Bohemian Rhapsody came out. I must have gotten about 50 copies of that song. They were not going to give up on that song. Even the record company itself and the group and radio was, what is this strange music we're hearing? But you could keep them personally. I had probably at one point 1,500 to 2,000, maybe more singles. And I did alleviate that. That was something that was living in my parents' basement. I moved into apartment after apartment after apartment in the 70s, so I didn't bring the music along with me. And I think somebody, after so long a time, that promotional only thing goes out of date and there's a statute of limitations on it or something. And I think I sold my entire collection to somebody at one point for not near what it was worth. He asked, from a technical point of view, was there any difference in playing a stereo record from a mono record on the radio? Sure, most of the songs were played with stereo. Did you ever face technical difficulties playing records with odd characteristics or RPM requirements? I don't know about any of that. All I know is that, as I said, the stereo records were actually in stereo. You could hear something in the back of your car and something else in the front of your car, and they kind of bounced back and forth, where mono was just one flat, and mono was used mostly on AM radio, I believe, and stereo became more of a factor as FM got into play. So,
and mono is short for monaural.
Mono and stereophonic. But actually being able to hear a song on the radio, I could never tell when somebody was playing a mono version or a stereo version. It never, I never really cared. But again, at the time, back in the day, they put a stereo version on one side, mono version on the other. Not only to keep the DJs from playing the wrong side of the record, but so that everybody could hear. They had stereos, for instance, they could hear the quality.
Well, I'm sure they were sending these to a lot of AM stations at the time that were still playing, broadcasting in mono.
Absolutely. So get another couple out of the way from David. I have a question for Gary. Has it ever happened the song released as just part of an album rather than released as a single ever became a chart hit anyway? The only thing I could tell you, David, on that is that I believe at one point the Billboard Hot 100 actually changed names several times. It was a Hot 100 singles chart. And that became, as songs like Stairway to Heaven and that kind of thing came into being, the Hot 100 singles chart became the Hot 100 songs chart. And after that, I mean, then again, they would track different things. I can't even begin to tell you what they do now. Now it's crazy. It's digital sales. It's how many times the song's downloaded. It's they somehow track those, and it's all computerized or whatever the word I'm looking for is. Electronic surveillance of songs. I think I mentioned today, but I looked over, I was like, I wonder what the top 100 looks like now. And that's based on downloads and based on actual, people listening, not based on sales at all, really. And I found the name Sabrina Carpenter, and there were 14 songs by her in the current top 100 that I looked at. Now, can you imagine back in 1970 or 1980 or 1990, 14 songs by the same artist in the top 100? It just didn't happen. If you had one record out at a time, and they were charted as they were played. But now it's,
the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees didn't have that kind of play, and they were so
Bee Gees
spectacular.
Occupied all 5 top spots at one point.
Oh yeah,
just about. And it's how Mariah Carey, "All I Want for Christmas Is You," is like the #1 song of all time now. Well, we know probably "White Christmas" by Bing Crosby is, but what do you say? Every time it's downloaded, it's counted as a point.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to try to get into all that. And another question: what would keep record companies back in the day from under-reporting the record sales to cheat a group of artists out of their due royalties? Have there ever been any such royalty disputes between famous artists and record companies? I believe so. I think Steve Miller was very adamant when he was put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, about how ripped off he felt by not receiving some royalties on stuff he'd written. And as I mentioned, Prince couldn't record or alter his own stuff that he didn't own. That's just crazy to me. But
well,
there were instances.
You could look at several. We look at what happened between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney with the Beatles stuff.
Yeah.
And then there was I mentioned that's probably why that you see more of these bands that were popular 40 or 50 years ago that are still touring, because that's one of the only ways they could make any real money for themselves, because record companies weren't giving them what they probably deserved.
Guys in the 60s, I mean, even the actors and actresses did not have, they got paid for maybe 10 reruns, and then that was it,
Case in point, if you put it that way, the Three Stooges made 190 short films for Columbia. You know how much money in royalties they made?
Probably zero. None.
Zero. Zip. They made extra money doing personal appearances after their contract was over with Columbia. And while they were on contract with Columbia from 1934, I believe, till 1959, they got zero raises in pay. They got $2,500 a piece for each movie. So it works both ways,
being the Batman freak that I am, back in '66, and I'm going to mention that in a minute. But I heard that Burt Ward received $350 per episode because it was his first acting job. And even though that show blew the face off the planet, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Batman. But I'm sure Adam West and probably all the rest of the people, the commissioner and Alfred and Andy Harriet and all those people, made more money than Burt did. So something that might fit into your curiosity, David, is I did hear stories about songs that record companies would hold back on reporting how many times they were played, so that when they finally got played, or when it finally came the due date, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that a song would be played off an album, and we knew the song was coming up. And one of them that comes to mind for me is "Don't Speak" by No Doubt, Gwen Stefani. Spiderwebs was out. We knew "Don't Speak" was going to be a hit, and that was the song everybody was talking about. We started playing it. Well, they held back until they released it as a single. So it like debuted at number 1 or number 5 or something, and it was like number 1 for 16 weeks, something like that, because the record company had held back and not reported when the song was actually out. So that's an interesting thing too, I guess, pretty much. You got anything you want to go over?
Well, I've got all of the YouTube comments here.
Okay.
That from this is, of course, like I said, this is from June until the end of June, I believe, until just here last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's start here. And this episode was season 4. This year. Episode 7 had our friend Paul Urbans on. We called it Charts and Lists. It also had pertained to a lot of the I think the Beatles, some, and the British invasion, so to speak. First one comes from an Anthony Coletra he says, "Hi from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Very much enjoyed the show with Paul. Thanks, Anthony. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you."
Really do.
One from Mo West Chameleon.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's on his birth certificate. Great history as far as a Brit. We had our own hit shows in the early 60s when I was an avid radio listener. The BBC started their first music chart show, Pick of the Pops, on October 4, 1955. Initially, it was broadcast on the BBC Light program. The show used aggregated results from various music publications like NME, Melody Maker, Disc, and later Record Mirror to compile a chart. The pirate ship Radio captured the music listeners from the mid-60s and forced the BBC to launch Radio 1 as a dedicated music program. Later, in the late 70s, they started their own official chart. I listened to this show in Spain, where I live now, and know Paul well and his skills as a historian, so enjoyed watching my buddy's input. So
very nice.
Very nice. So we are across the globe.
Yes.
Except for Russia. They don't like us.
That's right.
From Sheila Marie Rooks, 8068, says, "Hi, guys." Hello.
Hi, Sheila.
So, and this from Clipper Guy Clip. You always ask where people are listening from, watching from, whatever. Yeah. He says, "I'm located in Huntington, 2 floors below the host." So
2 floors below what?
2 floors below the host.
Oh,
so
okay.
There you go. That's that one. There's an episode 8 that was called "Now Cut That Out." Songs that were edited for airplay, and our friend Paul, who we just talked about.
Yeah.
Also, Don McLean's American Pie was issued to radio stations in an edited version, since radio stations could not flip the single over while playing the song.
Really?
That would be a tough one, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This special radio version was a little over 4 minutes instead of the over 8 minutes version. Yeah. And of course, David Mills again writes us and says, "You guys are great at coming up with interesting topics. Thank you. I never realized recording artists did short or longer versions of the same song. I guess that makes sense, since, as you said, shorter recordings are more likely to be played on the radio. Yeah, 3 minutes and 30 seconds is perfect. I don't understand, however, why YouTube gave me notification of your new video 3 full days after it was posted. I find these delays for other YouTube channels as well. I'll get notification days late, or even no notification at all. It's probably because they like you." Sheila Marie Rooks writes again, hello, guys. Listened to Gary for many wonderful years. And
How nice. How nice.
Um,
Always good. Thank you, Sheila. Always good to catch up.
Next, our episode 9 was I Know Who That Is. Show we went over about who you thought was singing. So what's back there, Gary? What
are we something bright yellow in the middle of the screen.
That's all right.
Okay.
David Mills writes again, says, you guys really amaze me with your encyclopedic knowledge of music history. I can understand how Gary acquired such a detailed insight. In the 5 decades that I've known Dave, I've never once saw him listen to a radio or heard him talk about any particular singer or music group. So I was especially impressed when show after show Dave displays the subject mastery of a Jeopardy contestant. I admire both of your memories and ability to recall information from years ago. Well, you're much too kind, and as far as Jeopardy would go, I would be the first one out. So
okay.
that I can promise you.
We'll come back to some of these.
Oh, and if you want to read the emails, go ahead.
Some more, yeah. Just kind of going back and forth. We never rehearse these things. We got a couple of messages from Frank Carter on our email address. I believe this came from. We did a show. I'm not sure what season or I think it was this season, but which episode it is. But we did a show about the word that. I asked, what, I will do anything for love, but I won't do that. What is that? And I mentioned some songs that had that in it, and Frank wrote and said, a couple of songs came to mind. Elvis's That's All Right.
Thank you, now.
And Dean Martin, Everybody loves somebody sometime. Dean Martin did That's Amore.
Thank you, Dean Martin.
But of course, that is amore. But what is amore? It's when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. And that, of course, it's my all-time fave. Play that funky music. There's a songs that had that in the
This reminded me of the movie Back to School. Rodney Dangerfield's Back to College, and the dean's last name was Martin, and he'd say, "Oh, thanks, Dean Martin."
I did one of these goofy. Let him pull me out of the audience and put me on stage at a hypnosis show.
Oh, geez.
A guy hypnotized me into thinking I was Dean Martin. I came out, I actually started singing Dean Martin. I didn't know the song, but the Dean Martin from inside me did, apparently. And so I ended up singing Everybody. Now I hear that and I think, that's me.
Okay. Okay, let's get on with this. Episode 10 was entitled It Didn't What? And that was about songs that didn't chart, I think is what it was.
Okay.
And of course, Mr. Mills writes, as he usually does, I think this was my favorite show ever. I really was stunned when Gary pointed out that none of these songs made the top 100. I never would have guessed that in a million years. And then again, he says he'd put me up on Jeopardy against any of the past champions. Well, that would be a mistake. Your memory works better and faster than the memory in my computer. Love your shirt. Well, that's nice. But your computer, if you're using like a Commodore 64, I'm still slower than that. So we'll get that out of the way.
I got one more mention here from Frank Carter.
Hang on.
He mentions the song, Thank You for Being a Friend. We did, the last show we did was our Thanksgiving show. It came out a little after Thanksgiving because of some health issues and not being able to get in the building or whatever. But Frank mentions Thank You for Being a Friend. I meant to mention that song. That song is a site of, or a source of debate for me, because many people call that song the theme to the Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. I take issue with that because back in '77, I first heard a song when I was working for WAMX. I fell in love with it. It was called Lonely Boy by Andrew Gold. Oh, what a lonely boy. It wasn't the same lonely boy that Paul Anka did centuries earlier. Not centuries, but decades. But Thank You for Being a Friend was the follow-up single to Lonely Boy, which went top 10, I believe. And yeah, I fought very hard for that song to get on the air, and nobody really remembers it. Frank Carter wrote me and said, reached number 25 in 1978. That's when that was the year I started at Key and was its music director, and I played that song, was very unhappy with the lack of airplay it got, and you never hear it on any radio station now. But the question, I wonder, is there a difference between a song that's the actual theme song to a TV show and a TV show using a song as its theme? The Andrew Gold song was re-recorded by a girl named Cynthia Fee, I believe. Her version never hit the radio. I don't think it was ever put out. But that to me is not the theme song to the Golden Girls. That to me is a song the Golden Girls decided to use as its theme. And I've compared the difference between, you would not call Love and Marriage by Frank Sinatra the theme to Married with Children. Nobody would do that. And so it kind of upsets me that Andrew didn't actually get to do the theme song, but it doesn't make sense they had a girl do it.
Yeah.
About 6 years later.
Now, let me add this,
yes.
As long as you're on the subject of Andrew Gold, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, if it's as good as a computer, he released a song under another group name back in the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And they called them, the song was called Building a Bridge to Your Heart. And it was a good song, but it was done by a group entitled Wax UK. And they, it was fronted, of course, by Andrew Gold. But if you get a chance to pull that up and listen to it, please do. It's a great song.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Back to the comments. Episode 11 is called "The Most Understood Word in a Song." And Dave once again says, "You guys really make an outstanding team." I thought, well, a team of mules. I wish both of you could have done a countdown hit show together back when Gary was in charge at Key. You know, you're in charge there. Thanks for answering my questions. I totally agree with Dave's closing comments that we live in the greatest country on earth. I wish Dave and Gary, all your listeners, very happy 4th of July. Great. Thank you very much. That was very nice. Sheila Marie Rooks once again says, great show. Thank you again. We appreciate that. Okay. Episode 13, Stars of the State. It was our subject. Okay. It's about big people who made it big in music from West Virginia as far as pop music goes. That's what it was based on. Dave says, I really enjoyed the West Virginia-based theme of today's show. Another excellent broadcast. However, I'm disappointed that neither I nor Eddie Diamond made your list of best singers from West Virginia. Hawkshaw Hawkins was not only from West Virginia, but he was actually born here in Huntington. He performed for a time at WCMI in Ashland. His biggest hit record was Lonesome 77203. Hawkshaw's sister, Lena Hawkins Berry, was a lifelong resident of Huntington and lived until 2022. She's buried at Whitechapel Memorial Gardens in Barbersville. I didn't know that Squire Parsons had died. I totally agree. He was a very tremendous vocalist. I used to watch him on Bill Gaither videos. What am I wearing? Nothing. I always watch Radio Days in the nude. I don't know how that came from, but I must have said something stupid. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, episode 14, viewer suggested topic, songs with the titled with black or white in the title.
Okay.
And of course, Dave says, thank you for the kind shout out. Since I spent the afternoon in the doctor's office, your show has most definitely been the highlight of my day. I thought both of you handled a potentially controversial topic with good-natured diplomacy. Good show. I can provide you another example from the country music side of things. And Dave is a huge country music guy, and especially the older country music. He's very well versed in it. A popular song that was performed only once. Hank Williams Sr. was doing a recording session late 1952, which turned out to be his last. Hank already recorded a lot of songs at this session, wanted to add another one at the last moment. Hank took his guitar and played for the first verse for his band, the Drifting Cowboys, so they would know the chord progression. They'd never heard the song before. Hank didn't sing the second verse because the chord progression was identical to the first verse. Producer Fred Rose asked Hank whether he wanted to rehearse the full song with the band before they tried to lay down the track. Hank said no, he was tired. Let's just finish up. So the Drifting Cowboys made up an introduction on the spot, and Hank began to sing. When Hank started singing the second verse, that was the first time anyone, including Hank's own band, heard the second verse. When Hank finished the song, the band came to a flailing, sloppy stop. But no one had messed up bad enough for Hank to try another take on the song. It was finished. His most iconic song, "Your Cheatin' Heart," was was a one-off recording. Hank passed away only weeks after that recording session. What you hear on Hank's record of "Your Cheating Heart" is the first time, and sadly the last time he ever performed that song. Like Elton John's song about Princess Diana you mentioned, the song was performed only once. Hank never performed that song before a live audience. It wasn't released until after Hank's death. This story was related by Don Helms, Hank's steel guitar player, who was a participant in that historic session.
Ah, okay.
So there.
All right. I have a couple of things from X. You got anything else you want to mention right now?
Well, let's see. I got one thing else, like one other thing from there. Paul Urbans again left a comment that I was working at a radio station in Kentucky when "I Ain't Never Seen a Black Man" by Wolfman Jack came out.
Mm-hmm.
We played it and got good response as we were carrying his syndicated show and was near a military base, so lots of our listeners were familiar with him. Wolfman Jack had a popular show on Armed Forces Radio, so soldiers in the military were familiar with him. The song even mentions West Virginia. So the lyrics were, "I ain't never met a man as pure as a driven snow, and I ain't never met a man as hard as West Virginia coal."
Wow. Okay.
So
very cool. Thank you, Wolfman, wherever you are. From X, Bill Carroll wrote me. Bill Carroll, and sent me a private message. Said, "Did you ever do anything noteworthy besides radio?" Well, I brought a couple of things that I did. This is going to crack this guy out. I kept this hidden. This is Flash Comics number 175 from January 1967. If you happen to come across a copy of this comic book, save it. It's worth $300 or $400 now, in good condition, or maybe more, because Superman is racing the Flash on the cover. I wrote in 1966. I was 11 years old, and I wrote in, started reading Flash comics, because everything was Batman, everything was DC, and so they found a way to cross Batman into every other character they had. Catwoman first appeared in Lois Lane comics, the Riddler and Detective, the Weather Wizard crossed from the Flash over to fight Batman in a copy of Detective Comics. So I wrote them a song. I wrote them a letter. Apparently when I was 11 years old in 66. This Flash Comics that I just showed is from January 1967. And they always post-dated those things, or predated those things. So it was probably out in October. I turned 12 in January 67. I became a little bit of a local celebrity when people heard that I had a letter in Flash Comics at the time. Also, I would show that letter column, but it's awful tiny. This is a little bit bigger, I think. This is a magazine that was published out of New York called Electronic Fun with Computers and Games. When I started writing for them, it was about 6 months before they folded. It wasn't, I don't think, because of me. But what I did, I picked up a copy of this on the newsstand. I don't have the title page on this, but I do still have where I wrote a review. And what I did, I wrote a couple of fake reviews and sent it into the magazine. The magazine wrote me back, said, "You're hired," and would send me a copy of a game for ColecoVision or Atari 5200 or whatever they could call it. Whatever I had, I think I was one of the Coleco owners at that time, and they would send me the video game that I got to keep, and I would return to them a review, and they printed it, paid me $50 for each review. I don't know whether you can see that or not. It says Blueprint. Blueprint is the name of the game, and it says a couple of lines down there by Gary Miller. So I got, those are the only things, Bill Carroll, that I did outside of radio that I could think of that might be interesting to bring up to you. But I did that. So there we go.
So he's a published author.
I was published in DC Comics before Clint, before Bo, before many of the guys from Huntington that made the comic pages as writers. I actually made it into the magazine before they were born, probably.
Yeah. One of your questions that you answered for David Mills came via one of our programs, is episode 16. Not only you answered his question there before, but Paul Urbans had given an answer to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul said record companies were not required to report sales to anyone. Motown, for example, never submitted sales data to the RIAA for gold record awards. Some have been awarded after Berry Gordy sold Motown to Universal. The Four Seasons sued Bob Crew, who they were signed to, for royalty disputes, and Crew then sued VJ, VEEJAY. This caused the Four Seasons to leave VJ and signed with Philips. The Beach Boys sued Capitol Records for lack of royalty payments, and this allowed them to get control of their albums from Pet Sounds on. So they started their own record company, Brother Records, which still operates today. Brother licenses the post-1966 Beach Boys songs today. The label is still owned by the Beach Boys. Now, do you have anything else?
Do have one more from Mimi7841 on Twitter, now X. She wrote me a few months ago. She said, "I heard you mention that there are several different versions of the same song, album, single, club, etc. Did you ever play the wrong version of a song?" Now, this is going to take a minute, but like we haven't already used up all your valuable time today, but there were two songs that came to mind when she wrote me that song. Did I ever play the wrong version of a song? You couldn't really do that when you were just dealing with singles. But when you started playing music off of albums and off the computer and off of CDs, it was very easy to come up with the wrong version. In 1970, Paul McCartney released his first solo album. It was called McCartney. And on that album was a song called Maybe I'm Amazed. Well, he didn't want it released as a single, so it was never released as a single in 1970. The studio version was not a hit. 6 years later, I guess, about or so, they recorded McCartney doing this song live, and it became a smash top 10 hit all over the
The
world.
best
The
version,
live
period.
version.
Best version, period.
Yeah, maybe I'm amazed. It certainly beats the same thing, same version. It's easy to see why it's a hit version and the studio version isn't. Same thing applies to, and that would only come up if I typed in maybe I'm amazed into the computer and played a song out of the computer or off CD maybe. The wrong information was entered, and I remember playing that version. The only time I heard it was one time, and I said, this is just not right. Same thing happened with Kiss. Kiss had 2 albums out that were not real successful, I don't guess. First single from the 3rd album was Rock and Roll All Night. Is that what it's called? I want to rock and roll all night. Yeah, okay, and party every day. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons wrote that song. The single version was released and became their biggest hit at number 68, I believe, in the studio. It wasn't till late, that was in 85, I guess, and or 75. I'm probably getting my decades mixed up. One of the 5. I guess it would have been at 75, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Later on that year, they knew they had a hit song, so they recorded it live with people, singing the anthem and everything. And it finally became a top 10 hit for Kiss. And so that was their first hit single. And it was, I played the wrong version. I played the studio version. One time when I brought up the song on the computer, I wanted to play it, and the wrong song got spit out. So that's all I can think of. Mimi, thank you for listening to us, and thank you for writing me on X.
Okay. One little note from our episode called Before and After a Huge Album. Sheila Marie Rooks writes again, I love that theme song, which is the reason we got banned in Russia.
That's very true.
Yeah.
The theme song is Life is a Rock, but the radio rolls me.
Bye.
BB Bumble and the Stingers. I can remember the words. I've totally gone blank on the...
Was it Reunion? Was it Reunion?
Reunion, yeah. That's right. Reunion, yeah.
But they that song, we used a very short amount of it. YouTube has some very stringent rules on copyright protection. We get a notice that we've got a copyright problem. It's not a strike, so they're not going to take the whole video down. Unfortunately, the country of Russia thinks that we deserve to be thrown in the gulag, so they have banned our videos from their country. And Vladdy, come on, give us a break, buddy. Okay.
I think it's mostly it on my part.
Yeah. Well, I've got just a few more episodes to go over here that we have some notes for, and
I got
then we'll be moving on. Episode 19 was the raspy / gravelly voice singers we went over.
Okay.
Of course, David Mills is, he's probably our biggest correspondent. He writes, another really good show. I'm always surprised by your detailed knowledge of events from many, many years past. Let me add a couple of similar examples that you touched on in the country music field. Ernest Tubb had surgery done on his throat, and he emerged from the operation with a more marketable vocal sound. Ernest had a fairly mid-range voice before having a tonsillectomy. After the operation, his voice became lower and rougher. And all of his hit records came after the surgery. As far as as far as threatening DJs who wouldn't play a record company's new releases, Loretta Lynn's husband Doolittle used a gun, but didn't use a gun. Didn't use a gun, but drove to radio stations from station to station and told each DJ he knew lots of tough goons in town who'd be listening for Loretta's record on their station. He strongly implied that these tough guys were quick to anger if they didn't get what they wanted. Here's an idea for a new show. Do a show based solely on country music. Was there any difference other than the music itself between being a DJ for country station and the top 40 station? Did the listening audience behave differently and react differently to a top 40 station compared to a country station? Do the record companies behave any differently?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, that's a good answer.
The answer to everything.
And
I don't think there was a lot of difference between the gun he's referring to. If you didn't see the episode, I heard a story about a DJ, a music director that met with a record company executive, and one of the reps from the record company brought a gun in and put it on the desk and said, "Are you going to play such and such a song or not?"
Certainly.
Which a record company wanted to do with me when Tiffany had I Think We're Alone Now out. And I ended up playing an unknown version by a group called The Relation Inc. And it became very popular around here. Tom Roberts, our old buddy, asked me for a copy of that record to put on his jukebox. So,
okay, classic. The same program had another classic vinyl 24. So styrene 45s were bad for getting Q burnt. The normal vinyl was fine normally. So when you talked about queuing records.
Yeah, when you queued them, especially when you bent backwards. When you go forward, there's something. I guess that's how scratching came about. That they do now with DJs and clubs. Are always.
It's also how the subject of backwards masking got started, because it said when you played the Beatles songs backwards, it told you to go, kill somebody or something of that nature. And that's just, bollocks to me. It's just
we would have to replace sometimes singles that got so badly Q burned. When we were queuing up those songs, they'd be replaced, a couple weeks.
I remember that video game, Qbert.
Qbert.
Oh, Qbert. Oh, sorry. On episode 20, the 90s Girl Power episode, Dave writes us again, said, "This was an especially enjoyable episode for me, probably because I actually answered one of the trivia questions correctly. I'm so proud of myself." On a different note, I'd like to share with viewers of this podcast what artificial intelligence had to say about Gary Miller. I asked ChatGPT to tell me about the career of Gary Music Miller. Below is a very impressive verbatim response received from AI.
Can't believe you did all that. Transcribed all that, David. Yeah.
Gary Music Miller is a well-known radio personality and music director in Huntington, West Virginia, Ashland, Kentucky, Iron, Ohio market for roughly 4 decades. Here are the highlights. Long career in the tri-state area, about 1971 to 2010. And best known as a top 40 DJ and music director at WKEE-FM. Described by local press and colleagues as having an upbeat, energetic on-air style, music was widely used as his radio handle because of his strong association with the music side of programming. Inducted into the West Virginia Broadcasting Hall of Fame as part of the 2015 class, a recognition of his long service to broadcasting in the state. Produced local radio history content later in his career. Examples include Radio Days with Gary Music Miller episodes available on YouTube, showing he remained active in the community after leaving full-time air shifts. He's remembered fondly in local memory threads and Facebook groups for commanding the airwaves in the 1970s to the 2000s and for being a central figure in Huntington's pop music radio scene. That's what AI thinks of you.
Thank you, AI.
Okay.
A lot more could have been said about me, Ben. I'm trying to figure out how they got all that information. I had no idea.
At least they mentioned our show.
They did. That's great.
Episode 21, which was the one before this one. That was thanks. It was called "Thanks a Lot." Thank you songs, whatever.
That was
David said, "Let me add a couple of songs from your list from the country field. Roy Clark's 'Thank God' and Greyhound, You're Gone."
Yeah.
And Ernest Tubbs' "Thanks a Lot."
Yeah.
So that was
a couple of country songs in there that had thanks. And I know I mentioned Frank Carter. Thank you, Frank, very much. for being a friend of mine and of being of the show business deal here.
The program.
Do need to mention, she won't ever see this, I'm sure, but we did the Girl Power show, I think 2 shows back. We did the thanks, and before that, I believe, 2 episodes prior to this one, we saluted the girl singers of the 1990s. And it just so happens one of the singers we mentioned was a girl named Lisa Loeb, who I wrote about on Twitter a few years ago. I saw her on an episode of The Nanny, and she popped up as like a supporting player. The Brian Setzer Orchestra was the big star of this episode, and she was like a manager or something off to the side. And I said, I saw you on The Nanny, and they hardly mentioned you at all. And that was how it came about that she started following me on Twitter, on X, and I started following her. And when we did the Girl Power of the 90s, we mentioned Stay, I Miss You, in parentheses, which was Lisa's big song in the 1990s. And I actually sent her a link to the show. She apparently listened to it, or somebody listened to it for her, but we got responded to by Lisa and said, thank you for including me in your salute to the women singers of the 1990s. And that was
very kind of her.
Really, really very nice. And I think there was, I'm going to mention something here. I may as well waste some more time here. What do you think of this girl?
Well, I think she's very attractive for one thing.
Very attractive, and it's very difficult to throw away something like that or get rid of it. Her name is Elisa Fiorillo. She's a fairly big star in the UK. She, you can imagine her dropping by a radio station. She wrote, Gary, How Can I Forget You? Elisa Fiorillo and 3 hearts down there. That was the name of the song they were pushing here. And that shows you to what extent they would go. Sometimes artists would walk into the radio station and say, I got a song. And they brought the Elisa, Chrysalis Records brought Elisa Fiorillo in and tried to make a big star of her here. She did do some background stuff for Prince and had moderate success here, but certainly she's not a household word. But she's very, very, very attractive, and she's just that cute in person. So I read about her. She won Star Search, which was the equivalent of American Idol, pretty much at the time it was on. She won Star Search, and as I said, she did a lot of Prince background work.
You know that Prince never used his first name? Well, his first name was Finger. But
Finger Prince? No, I didn't know that.
Well,
like Lisa didn't use her first name,
right.
Ear.
Yeah.
Earlobe.
Yeah.
Thank you. We love you, Lisa. You're still there.
We're recording this on what is known as the winter solstice, shortest day of the year, which means that Christmas is not far away. Now, in that vein, we have decided here, I have decided that I've sprung this on Gary. It's time for a Christmas version of Masterpiece Lyrics. So, shall we begin?
This is where a lyrical song is presented to you in dramatic fashion.
Yes.
Okay.
And in the vein of Christmas, we thought this would be appropriate. She'd been drinking too much eggnog, and we begged her not to go. But she'd forgot her medication, so she stumbled out the door into the snow. When they found her Christmas morning at the scene of the attack, she had hoof prints on her forehead and incriminating claws marks on her back. Grandma got run over by a reindeer walking home from our house Christmas Eve. You can say there's no such thing as Santa, But as for me and Grandpa, we believe. Now we're all so proud of Grandpa. He's been taking this so well. See him there watching football and playing cards and drinking beer with Cousin Mel. And it's not Christmas without Grandma. All the family's dressed in black. And we just can't help but wonder, should we open up her gifts or send them back? Grandma got run over by a reindeer walking home from our house Christmas Eve. You can say there's no such thing as Santa, but as for me and Grandpa, we believe.
We believe.
Now the goose is on the table and the pudding made of fig, and the blue and silver candles that would have just matched the hair in Grandma's wig. I've warned all my friends and neighbors, better watch out for yourselves. They should never give a license to a man who drives a sleigh and plays with elves. And that's why Grandma got run over by a reindeer walking home from our house Christmas Eve. You can say there's no such thing as Santa, but as for me and Grandpa, we believe. But as for me and Grandpa, we believe. Yes, as for me and Grandpa, we believe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the audience for that.
And that is our Christmas edition of Masterpiece Lyrics. So
I mentioned one thing I'm going to try to do at the end of every show in 2026, and that is, considering that we continue on without being yanked or our health stays up or whatever, but we have health issues that we have to deal with. But I wanted to end each show with something called, I need a board to put up there or how to put a title up. You gotta hear this. That's what it's going to be called. It's going to be a thing at the end of every episode where I come up with a song that was never a hit here in the United States, but was released, and just most of these songs fell through the cracks, but they were songs that I played almost all of, and when I was allowed to, and what happened to them, I don't know, but you'll figure this out as we go along. Today's episode, I want to mention a group called Lighthouse. Lighthouse was from Canada. They went on tour actually with Stan Peters. No, with the Stampeders. And there was actually a group called Gary and Dave, which I'll be bringing up at some point. But from Canada, Lighthouse.
It wasn't us.
It was not us. Lighthouse did a song called One Fine Morning, which was a pretty big hit here in the States. It's a really great song. Brass, guitar work, the violins, the whole thing. It's just a very, very well produced, almost overproduced song. Lighthouse, One Fine Morning. They came back with a song called Pretty Lady in the very, very early 70s. Wound up being their second biggest hit in Canada to One Fine Morning, but it did not get any play here in the States. So if you guys are searching YouTube, I'm going to give you songs that I believed in, thought were hits. I was wrong. And this was a hit in Canada, but it was never a hit in America. And it's called Pretty Lady. Go listen to it. See what you think of it. I think it's a great song by the group Lighthouse. And that's my recommendation for You Gotta Hear This.
Well, you're ruined it. It's supposed to be for next year. Forget it's over with now, folks. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm going to start it now. I haven't gone over a list of recent deaths either, which I had a habit of doing the last few shows, but I haven't heard of anybody that...
I'm going to touch on one that happened. I'm going to touch on one because I like the songs that this guy got airplay out of. Some of you may be familiar with him, some of you may not, but a gentleman by the name of Carl Carlton passed away. Carl Carlton was famous for a song called She's a Bad Mama Jamma. And he did a cover
Great
of,
version.
If you haven't
Everlasting
heard
Love.
Yeah, Everlasting Love. If you haven't heard this thing ever in your life, you owe it to yourself to listen to it, because it's better than the original, in my opinion.
Well, the first time I ever heard the song was in '67 or something by a guy named Robert Knight, and it was hit when I was a little kid, and it was very well done. It was a great song. I could remember it was a great song, and then Carl Carlson comes along with his version. And I mean, it just absolutely blew me away. It is just so incredible. It's another one that's incredibly produced and was actually on the edge of the disco revolution. And it was a very easy
good song, barely 3 minutes long.
Yeah, and it was
perfect for radio.
It became a big radio hit, and was a big hit in the clubs.
Yeah,
as we went into disco. So I think we're finally done.
We are finally finished, and we want to thank each and every one of you for your support and your viewership for this year. It's appreciated more than you know. We also would like to encourage you to continue to watch. We want you to. We'd like
below. There's a subscribe.
Right,
we'd love to have you as a subscriber.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And the likes. We look.
It's good for algorithms. Good for other people to see.
Yep.
Also, if you would like to get a hold of Gary, you can write him at rdwgmm@gmail.com. You can get him on X at Gary Music Miller. You can get him.
You can also leave a comment on the video.
Yeah, leave a comment down below, and we'll get to it as soon as we can, and we'll read it on the air and hear it on the air. We'll read it on the program and give you your proper acknowledgement, so to speak.
Thanks to the 1640. I always try to remember the radio
Museum of Radio Technology. 1640 Florence Avenue.
Okay, I've got it. Yeah.
In Huntington. So please check them out online. It's mrtwv.org.
They provide us with this backdrop and the fact that we're in a make-believe studio. So
they've allowed us to do this for 4 seasons, and we really appreciate it.
Yep.
So with all that said, I think we're pretty much done. We wish each and every one of you a very, very Merry Christmas. Remember, it's an overused phrase, but remember the reason for the season. We hope you have a very, very, very happy, safe, and prosperous 2026. So with that said, we're finished, and you're saying to yourself, thank you. But we say thank you as well. Goodbye. Have a great holiday season. Take care of yourself, and God bless. So long.
Bye-bye.